On time, you're late.
Okay. $10.58.
Okay, you can work off that. So your mic is on, they can hear you now. Hello, Trent.
Hey, Art, how are you?
Good. We're just getting our sound and everything ready here. Marquise, Travis.
Hey, Art.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well.
By the way, thank you for all those letters you sent. Jess?
Very cool. Very cool, Travis.
I'm glad they all made it.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Did we just lose Art?
Because he's going to have to join us.
I'll get one. You
Oh,
sit down.
is it? I got it.
I was gonna get a nicer one. I'll get a nicer one.
Oh. Who is that with Richfield Young Life?
This would be Darby Vokes.
Hello, Darby. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, Art. Good to see you. Are you
Good.
going by Jess Kuykendall these days? Did you go through an identity crisis?
Yeah. My name is Jess. Yes. Thank you.
Great.
Darby, you asked a question by text. Have I ever lost money? Or what was your question about
Yeah,
raising money?
I'll fill everyone in. I was asking Art, who I would say is one of the most experienced fundraisers for both people of faith and people outside of the faith sector. And I was coming from a fundraising consulting meeting and was a little confused at a donor's response that I had the day before. So I texted Art. I said, earlier in your career, when you would fundraise and ask people for money, how often would people say no?
Okay, that's a very important question. Did you all hear that question? I would have to say that I would get no's fairly often, okay? Because I was more on a vision and an idea than I was a plan. And people like to see track records, they like to see plans, they like to see results, they like to know that you've done something. So when you're starting out, you're just trying to make your point. You're trying to help them see what you see. And they say, "Hey, but what's your plan?" And that takes time and takes, and so, yes, I would, now, I will tell you this, that there was a man, Harry Davis, who lived in the neighborhood. He was one of the first African Americans to come up from the South. And he had to stay at the Phyllis Wheatley House over in North Minneapolis because he couldn't live anywhere. They had to live in a black home. And he went to work for the Star Tribune. And he worked his way up in the Star Tribune and bought a house on Park Avenue. And it was an amazing thing to have this guy do that. He was also on the school board. And so I got to know him because his kids were involved in our program. And he got to know us, and he liked us. And so when I said we want to raise money for the summer program, he said, "I'll help you." So he wrote 7 letters to 7 CEOs of companies that he knew through the Star Tribune. The first one I went to see was Honeywell, because that was right in our neighborhood. And I went to not the CEO, but I went to one of his people that he gave me. And he was an African American, and he listened to me, and he said, "I'm going to give you a check for $3,000. And I want you to tell people that you go out to that you got the invite from Harry Davis, but that I at Honeywell gave you $3,000. So I thought, wow, I'm going to go out to 6 other companies and I'm going to get $3,000 for my $20,000 need for the summer program that year. So I went on. The next one I went to, he said, "Yes, I like that. I'll give you 1% of your budget, which is $200. Okay, no, I said, "But how about 3,000? I'll give you 200. All the rest of them gave me 1%. That was that's their line. So I was getting $200 when I thought I was going to get 3,000. How's that? Is that a good story? No, but it's a story, right? But I had invites. Now, here's what happened. One of the companies ended up to be a company that Al Nunes worked for, Pillsbury. It was Pillsbury. You heard of Pillsbury? And Al worked for them, and he also worked for the Timberwolves. We got to know each other. And so eventually, Al got $5,000 from Pillsbury, and 3 years later got $25,000 a year from Pillsbury. Now, it's built on friendship, it's built on time, it's built on outcomes, it's built on track record, it's built on history, but you have to do that. You build relationships. Does that make sense? And you find people that believe in what you're doing. And by the way, Al Nunes was an African-American basketball player, All-American, and worked for the Timberwolves, and then worked for Pillsbury. And so it's a great story. Okay. Now we're going to go to our program today. Now, by the way, Darby, did that make sense?
Yeah, it certainly does. I think takeaway from that is that you got to play the long game, which means you got to be in it for the long haul.
Right.
So yeah, I appreciate you answering that. You know,
Okay.
like yeah. First answers were small, and then after time and relationships, things got bigger.
Right. Right. Okay. We're gonna continue here. We're gonna go to page 1 of our program here today. John is going to come back and he'll check us in a minute. So this is session 3, and what's your community is what we're talking about today. And how do you love your city to be a city of transformation for everyone? Now that's an important one for Des Moines. It's important for Minneapolis. It's important for St. Paul. It's important for Richfield. And so that's what we're going to do. The next one. While Zooming today, please mute your microphone so that we're not hearing you, and then unmute to ask questions or when offering an answer or a thought. Does that make sense? So put your speaker on mic, on mute, okay? Now, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna see a video here, and I want you to watch it. It's short, but watch this video. Now, I want you to just think for a minute. What did you see in that video? By the way, this is in Sri Lanka, and it's a very interesting video and one that you can use in the future. But what did you see? What did you think was happening? Yes, McKeith. You're muted. Marquise, you're muted. Oh, okay. Okay, anyone else?
Looked like stuff was about to get blown away. I mean, I was like, there's no way that we're not going to see zucchini splash all over this camera lens. It was that close to where the train was going. It was right underneath. And then immediately after it passed, people took up the available real estate and set up their tents.
Okay, so it's important to work together because that train comes every 3 hours. Isn't that interesting? And they have to pull their curtains up and then put them down and work together, because if you're gonna work together in tough situations, you have to work like this, don't you? Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to show you a different one. This is going to be from the Zoom book, and it's going to take a couple of minutes. It's silent. We're just going to watch it, and I want you to watch what happens in this Zoom book. Okay, next. Yeah, there's people that couldn't come today. Now, I'd like you all to unmute for a minute. We're not going to look at each other, but I'd just like you to share, what did you see and how long did it take you? How many frames did it take you before you got what was happening here? Trent?
I think for me, it was, I think 3 or 4 frames in. You know, it shows me the value of perspective. All of them are valuable, but it's until you start zooming out that you see the bigger picture. I know as a leader, sometimes I can get too focused on just one perspective. And that's so valuable to zoom out and get other views of things.
Okay, now let's watch this again. Okay. Now, let's reflect a little bit more on this. Can we see each other? Okay. Reflect on this and what did you see?
I had no clue what I was looking at the start when it was the tip of the rooster's head. I was like, what is this? What? And then it was like, kids, I had no clue what was going on. I'm like, why is Art showing this video? And then it started to make sense. And then I started to think the first time around, I could guess what the next thing was going to be. I'm like, oh, it's just a picture of a picture of a picture, but it wasn't. It was a stamp, and it was a TV screen, and it was on the side of a bus. I mean, it wasn't just someone holding a photo of someone else. And then zooming in, it felt like it made a lot more sense because I had seen the bigger perspective once we started to look at the minute details, because I knew where we were going.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think another thing I noticed was when zooming in on it, it was like I finally saw what was reality and what wasn't. Zooming out of it was hard to tell when we were going to get out of a stamp or a picture and when it was going to actually get to a person. But zooming in, I kind of saw when it was becoming more of a picture.
Okay. Now, isn't it interesting how many levels there are going out and coming in? And then just stop for a minute and ask the question, how many people see life all the way out and all the way in? How many people are stuck on one of those levels? Does that make sense? And what level are some people stuck on? And if you're going to be a leader that sees the big picture, you've got to take the time to go to all the levels and be able to go out and to come back in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Let's go to the next picture. The next picture is a map. And the map is one I have in my office, and if you were here, you saw it. And I ask people, do you have a map of your community in your office? And most people don't. So they don't see their office. Now, see the next one. This is a bigger picture. We have another map. We see a bigger picture. Now, if we could go back to the last one. I'm going to ask Marquise, where where are you? Where are you in this picture? This is Central Neighborhood.
I'm everywhere in there.
Okay, so you know the Central Neighborhood.
I do. I've stayed from 31st and First to 37th and Park. So
Okay, so
that's,
go to the
I
next
stayed
one.
in everywhere in between there.
This is a little bigger because if we were to map it out, we could draw a circle, a square. And you would be able to go to 38th in Chicago, which is your office, right?
That is correct.
But you move through the community.
Right.
Okay. Travis, where are you?
I'm not on that map.
No, you're not on this map, but in Des Moines.
Yeah, I'm in Des Moines. Well, I'm actually currently in West Des Moines, but in Des Moines, I'm on the north side of Des Moines,
Okay.
where
Do
I
you have a
live.
map? Do you have a map in your office of Des Moines?
Not in my office, but I did just start a new job this week, so maybe that's something I can invest in.
Okay, okay. I'm just saying that one of the people, Jordan Nelson, out at Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, he got in touch with the guy who takes these pictures, and he
Yep.
ordered one and has one in his office for where he is. So it's important to get that big picture. Does that make sense? And then be able to go down and say, this is where I am, this is where I live, this is what we are, and understand it. Okay? Okay. That, by the way, Trent, this would be a good one for down where you are, Loring Park.
Yeah,
Okay. Now, we're gonna take a look at what this could be for geography. When you look at an individual citizen, and what's the next thing? You go from the individual to the what? Say it.
the house,
House to the next what?
block,
Oh, a block. Then what? See,
and your
neighborhoods.
neighborhood.
Yeah, which are residential or commercial or industrial or ethnic or religious. I'm saying that because those are all stories that we'll get to in a minute. The next one, communities. So you go from a neighborhood to a community, which is a ward. It's a parish. The Catholics have parishes. The school districts have school districts. And so you're in a school district with a high school. Then you're in a city. And then the city, you're in a county. And the county is in a metropolitan area. And then the metropolitan area is in the state. But then you go out to the state, but then you come back down. Isn't that interesting for geography? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So I live in a house, but I had to know my block. I have to know the people living around me. Now, many times people don't do that. They just drive into the garage, park the car, go in the house, and that's it. The only reason you would meet your neighbor is if they have a dog that's barking all the time, or kids that are beating your kids up, or I'm just saying, but we don't need people. Okay, next. The sociology. Just take sociology for a minute, because you have the least, the last, the lost, and the left out. You have the homeless, you have tent cities, and you have illegal immigrants. And that's one level. What's the next level? Read it.
welfare recipients,
Oh, the subsidized. Okay. Where do they live? Projects. Trailer courts, etc. What's the next?
the poor working class,
In Des Moines, where do the poor working class live?
North side, south side.
Okay. Marquise, where do the poor middle class, working class live?
I would say Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, and Central neighborhood. A lot of north side.
Mhm. Darby, where in Richfield?
The east side of Richfield, right near the airport.
Okay, okay. Then you have the middle class, and then you have the upper middle class, then you have the upper class, with gated communities, right? You can't get in unless you live there. And then you have the Forbes, the really big ones out on the lakes and all that. And then you come back down. And so there's a sociology to neighborhood, okay? Next. Now you got economic business zooming. You have the very slave, immigrants, addictive, pimps, prostitutes, trafficking, victims. Then you go to the day worker. They only work by day. Have to report every day and go out to work. And then you have the laborers. And then you have union laborers. It gets more organized. Then you have a crew boss and a plant manager. And then you go up to be a general manager. And then you go up to be, the CFO, work with the finances, or operations, the COO, or the executive CEO, or the chair of the board, which owns the company. And then you come back down all the way. So if you're going to connect with people in business, you see the levels, right? Any response to this? Okay, next.
Wait, hold on.
Okay, go ahead, John.
The last one
Yeah.
says slave, illegal immigrants. What does that mean? I mean, identify what a slave in today's world is.
Well, this is a bigger picture. Now, we'll get into that in a minute. but
Oh, okay.
There was a slave time, and people came from slavery.
Oh, okay. So you're just not looking at today. You're looking at history.
And even in the world today,
Yeah.
because you've got slums, you've got terrible places all around the world, and there's slavery in there.
Yes.
There's slavery today.
Yeah. Trafficking and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Okay. Next, government. Government's interesting because if you're going to work in a community, you've got to know government. So you got your ward or your district representative. You've got a school principal in your ward because you got a high school and you got a principal. You have a junior high and you have a principal. You have a police precinct, which has a lieutenant, and you got a fire department with a captain. And then you go up to the city and you have city council, and they run the city. Police chief, a fire chief, the school superintendent. You also have a jail. Then you have the county, which has commissioners. They're different than city commissioners. And then you got sheriff, and you have a jail. But then you go up to the state, and that's got a governor, judges, district representatives, and legislatures. You got prisons, and you got a military. Then in the federal, you got a president, U.S. Congress, representatives, federal military, and the Supreme Court. How many on the Supreme Court? How many on the Supreme Court? Hello? How
Is it
many on the
12?
Supreme Court?
Is it 12?
I don't know, I thought it was 12.
9. Okay, then we come down. And we come down to our work. Now, isn't it interesting that if you're going to do something, like we have a bridge over down Lake Street, we have a bridge that is deteriorated and it's not being fixed. And all of these government people are connected to that bridge and why it's not being fixed. and they're having arguments over who is in charge of that. So if you're going to do something, you've got to get specs and regs. You've got to get people to sign off on it. Does that make sense? Okay. Education, early brain development, preschool, elementary special ed, middle school, high school, 2-year college. Both the city, county, and state have those. You got an industrial trade school training, military career training, college, private, faith-based, state. You got graduate schools for advanced degrees. You got academic fellowships. You got accrediting institutions that accredit you. And then you come back down. So as you go and you have children, you go up this little way, and then as you've gone through, and does that make sense? Okay, next. Here are the ethnicities. Now, John, this is the ethnicity one that I think is interesting. So what's the first thing that happened here?
Out my glasses for
Okay.
1,800 Native Americans, indigenous people, I think.
Yeah. Okay, can you see this?
Yeah. 1400s, Native Americans, indigenous peoples.
Then what came next?
December 21, 1620, the Mayflower landed at Plymouth Rock.
Well, that's a big deal because the English came over and they were going to begin to take over America, and they also had slaves. Okay?
1600s, English and indentured servants, half and half.
Yep, half and half. Okay. Next,
1790, free white persons.
they came in. Next.
1850s, Northern Europeans. 1860, blacks.
Yep.
1890, Jews, Italians, and Slavs.
All of a sudden, they started coming in. Next.
1900, Southern and Eastern Europe. 1950, Asians. 1965, Latin Americans, Vietnamese, Hmong.
By the way, let's just stop for the Asians for a minute, because when they came from China, we didn't allow the Chinese, they came in and did railroads, but we didn't allow them to do businesses. The only thing that they could do was restaurants. So all over the United States, you have Chinese restaurants in the big cities.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? And in Chicago, you got Chinatown, and we did a tour to Chinatown all the time, restaurants. But they do restaurants because we allowed them to do that, but they couldn't do anything else. Okay, keep going.
1965, Latin Americans, Vietnamese, Hmong.
Do you know how many Hmong are in St. Paul? Anyone know? 100,000 Hmong. There's a huge Hmong community in St. Paul, and they live in geographic areas. Okay. Next.
1995, Mexicans, Chinese, Filipinos, India, Cubans, Colombians, El Salvador, Dominican Republic, and South Koreans and Africans.
Came up. Yep. Next.
2000, Somalians, Ethiopians, Mexican, Burmese.
Do you know how many Somalis live in the Twin Cities? We have over 120,000 Somalis in the Twin Cities, and they have spread themselves around the state. Okay?
2021, Afghanistan's, Ukrainians, Russians, and Venezuela.
You have today huge groups of Afghanistans. Ukrainians are coming in. Russians. You know how many Russian churches there are in Minneapolis? 6 Russian churches. One of them has 900 members. Another has 600. Ukrainian churches. And so as the world changes, people are coming in to our cities. You have this in Des Moines, Travis? This is big right now, isn't it? And we have it in the Twin Cities here. Now, let's talk about Richfield, because I had a Young Life Club derby in Richfield, you know, when we started in the 60s, and we had one black kid in the whole, in all of Richfield, in the whole high school. Today, what's your population in Richfield minority?
It's about 44% Hispanic or Latino. It is 36% Black or African American. And then it's about 30%, or about, what would that be? It's about another third Caucasian, white. I'd say about 5% Asian American, Pacific Islander.
So that is changed immensely, hasn't it? And you go out to all of our suburbs, and what's happening is the mix. So this is what's been happening to the ethnicities in the immigration into our cities. So you okay, next. Now, how do you change geography into community? And how do you love your city to be a city of transformation for everyone? Next. How do you set a table for community transformation? Examples of tables. The vulnerable, the least, the last, the lost, and left out. The private sector, business and corporate. Community sector, nonprofit, and leaders of goodwill. Education sector, educators at all levels. We saw all those levels. In the religious sector, clergy leaders and faith-based leaders. And so how do we gather the people who are people of good faith and goodwill? And how do we make them come together? Okay, now, this is a very interesting circle that we have here, because in your community, the vulnerable are all around. They're all around. We talked about that. Jill, you had a very interesting thing happen this morning. Would you just share the story why you were late this morning? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I stop at Lund's on Lake Street to pick up a salad for lunch many days. And the other day there was this homeless man there. And he, when I walked in, said, "You getting your donut? I'd like one." And he said it in such a personable way with such a beautiful smile. I kind of looked at him and thought, do I take him seriously and do something? And I walked inside, and I felt like in the Bible where the man was sitting outside the gates of the city and just being ignored constantly. I thought, I'm not going to ignore him. So I went in and bought him a sandwich, and I bought him a donut. But he's been on my mind. So today I was going to drive by, but I didn't need a salad. But he was still sitting there. So I still pulled in the parking lot, and I went over and I talked to him, and I said, "Who are you?" And he says, "Well, I'm Robert." And I said, "Why are you here?" And he said, "Well, I don't have a home. I had a mother. We were living together in an apartment. She now has to go to memory care, and I couldn't pay for the apartment that we were in by myself." When I was listening to him, I thought, okay, how much of this do I believe? How much of this is, his story? But I thought that isn't for me to judge. This is the story he's telling me, and he obviously needs help. And so another guy came by and gave him a sandwich and a banana. I said, "Well, you don't need that today. What do you need, Robert?" And he said, well, you know, I could use finances. And I said, I know you could. So I reached in my wallet and I pulled out all the cash I had. I just couldn't get him out of my mind. Many times I've walked by and I haven't done anything. And for some reason, I can't walk by Robert.
John, you're connected to Mad Dads.
Yes.
What do Mad Dads do?
We are a community organization that reaches out to at least the last and the lost.
How?
We reach out to them with resources. We try to keep police involvement at a minimum. You know, we break up fights. We help people get into treatment, sober housing, things of that nature. We hire a lot of people that are homeless. I've got probably about 8 homeless people or ex-homeless people now because we help them get into their own space, working for us. And we deal with a lot of ex-gang members in a good way because we see the good in everybody, even if they don't see it in themselves.
Okay, we're going to come back because I want you to see this, because you see we have government sector, public, we have private, which is corporate, we have religious, which is the faith, we have education, and then we have the community. And then the vulnerable are all over. Okay, next. There was a Polish anthropologist who studied the Western United States and saw 3 things. She saw landscape, she saw machinery, and she saw people. And she noticed that we fit into these categories as well. Next. Landscape. It's the cultural diversity within our city or country. People groups as curiosities. And we call them mission fields. Marquise, you work in a mission field.
I do.
Yep. And urban communities and slums as service, learning, work projects, places to go observe, and then go home gratefully. They come in and do something. People come in and do something and then go back out, go home. You're volunteers. A lot of times this happens. Does that make sense? Okay, next. It's not that we don't love our machines, because we see landscape. By the way, landscape was, she saw beautiful mountains and beautiful hills and beautiful land. But then when she said people are landscape, they say, don't go over there, don't go out there, don't go around those people because they're scary. Or you don't know what's going to happen. Don't come into the city. Don't come to certain areas. Then there's machinery, and people are machinery. That is, I go to the store and somebody serves me. I have people that are doing things for me all the time that I just say thanks, or I don't say anything. Bus drivers, truck drivers, blah, 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 blah. It's not that we don't love our machines. We like to take care of them, to keep them polished, to keep them in good health, to keep their place. Migrant workers, bus drivers, clerks, service industry. However, they're like well-loved dogs, which is a member of the family, as long as it sleeps on the floor. As long as it stays in its place. And then there is people. And we're gonna make a difference here, because my people are people that I would invite in my house. Now, how many people and who do you invite in your house? And would you invite some of these other people in your house? No. My people are the ones that are important. Next. Now, who are the people you categorize as landscape? Stop there for a minute. Have you ever categorized people as landscape? Who? Share.
over north, I would say the highs and the lows. If you live in the lows, you're part of that group. But in the highs over South Minneapolis, I would consider rolling 30s, and Sorrento's 13s that are here now. They're landscape to me, places, Broadway and Lindale. Is it? Where the murder station is, that's landscape to me that I don't go in. Okay.
Others? Marquise, do you have landscape?
Yes, I would say the people that have always been in Minnesota, I would say. 30s neighborhood, like Mr. Turnips, he said.
You ever been out to a gated community?
Negative.
Okay. You've been up to the 52nd floor of the IDS building?
Negative.
That's where the CEOs have their office. Retired CEOs are all up there. Isn't that interesting? Okay.
It is.
Travis, where's your landscape?
It's a good question. I would think probably more of the downtown Des Moines area and some of the bigger corporations, the financial industry or the insurance industry buildings.
Okay, so isn't it interesting the flip-flop here? You see what I'm saying? There's some people that have the vulnerable as landscape. Others would have the wealthy or the corporate. You see what I mean? Now, Trent, where are you in this whole thing? Landscape.
I think probably landscape for me is the people who drive in and out of downtown for work. It's just a location for work, not home.
Okay. Okay. Who are the people that you use as machines? That's an interesting question, isn't it?
Lyft and Uber.
Say it again.
Lyft and Uber drivers, they're machines. They're supposed to show up on time, do what they're supposed to do, and then we'll call you when we need you again.
Take me where I'm supposed to go.
Yep. You better do it nicely because I can report you.
Oh. Okay. Who else do you use as machines?
Say grocery stores, convenience stores, gas stations, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Kind of get in and get my stuff and then head out from there.
Never talk.
Not much. Maybe
No.
airplanes, airports, that kind of stuff too. I'd kind of throw the headphones in and just get to where I'm trying to go.
Cash and credit cards. Thank you. Plastic or paper? Paper. Okay. Okay. Who are your people? Who are your people? Who do you let in your home? Who don't you, don't versus who don't you let in your home?
Say church friends, colleagues, family, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
I just bought a house right in South Minneapolis, Richfield area. And we had our large group gathering with all of our high school students this past Monday. And I was excited to announce that I had a house and just got into a little bit of a discussion with my fiance and some of our volunteers about whether or not it would be appropriate to post the address and a map of where the house is for all the high school kids. Ultimately, I decided to post the address. And I said, hey, this is my house. I'm excited to, announce that this is where we'll be living right by the high school. You guys are welcome anytime. But it wasn't met with acceptance from everyone. And I just thought that was interesting how we view people in our community, whether or not we'd let them in, or if we're excited about having them in or apprehensive to it.
Interesting. Well, now you're raising a very important question, because as a leader, and you're a leader, and we're all leaders. I think you have to be careful about your house being available to anybody, anytime. Does that make sense? So that
Oh, yeah.
when I was a youth leader and I lived across the street from the church, I didn't want people coming over to my house after 6. And don't call me after 7. And don't, in other words, my house is I go home to my family and that's my house. And I have to protect that. So there's a paradox here, isn't there? Okay, who are your people? And then again, as a leader, I have to protect my time. I have to protect my family. I have to have time alone, right? So there's a paradox here. Okay. Is there room in you for change and growth? As you think about who do you treat as landscape and who do you use as machines and who are your people and who do you allow in your home? So you did invite them over, Darby, just for a kind of a big thing, but you want to be careful about how you put it out on a map.
Right.
And,
Yeah, we said that they're welcome. They need to call us before they stop by. That was kind of the rule. That was the wall we put up. It's just it was an interesting social dynamic listening to what different people thought the different walls should be, because everybody has a line, right? Some people will walk past Robert and won't even look at him. Some people will buy him a donut. Some people will give him money, right? We all have comfort zones. And it's interesting just looking at those.
Okay. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is, if we're going to work on this, we have to put the vulnerable in the middle, because they're all over the place. But how do we put them in the middle? And then what do we do? So what happens is the corporate, the government, the faith, the education, and the community sector often put the vulnerable in the middle, and then they're going to do something for them. Okay, what does corporate do? Oh, they'll give a $5,000 grant. What does education do? Oh, we'll come in and do a study, make a report. What does the faith community do? Oh, we'll go in and we'll clean up for a day, or we'll do a project, and then we'll go back home. What does the government do? Well, we'll think about that, maybe do a grant and do something. So they do something for the vulnerable. Does that make sense? I'm going to stop on that. I just want to think about that for a minute. What projects have you done for the vulnerable, where you went in and did something and it came back out?
I would say for me, during the time where Tent City was still up and around, my husband and I, we went over there and we put up our own tent amongst everybody else. And we cooked food, burgers, hot dogs, chips, drinks. We passed out clothes to people and prayed with people and sat down and, with them and talked to them just as normal people. And that's one thing the people in the homeless community say a lot is people look at them as, as though they're like afraid or like they don't want to touch them, they're diseased. I'm not going to look at them. If I look at them, something's going to happen. And one thing that they mention every time we go out is that we love how, you guys make us feel like we are somebody, we are important, and that we matter. And yeah, so I just think that that's huge, just showing people that no matter what their circumstance is at that current time, like you still matter, you're still loved, you're still you're seen. So yeah, that's something that I've done. I've gone into a community and just loved on people.
That's pretty important. That's a great story.
Thank you.
What other things have you done for the vulnerable?
One of the things we recently did last month is partnered with a foundation from the private sector and then our church, and we worked with the principal of our local school just a block away, and we helped to provide school uniforms and school supplies for all the kids because their families are mostly coming from a situation of economic poverty.
Okay. Travis, you've done things where you've gone in and put on athletic events.
Yeah, just recently last week, we actually partnered with a few different organizations, what Can Play, the YMCA, and Big Brothers Big Sisters, kids that normally don't have the opportunity to be around some of those athletes, and put on a free basketball clinic, free being the emphasis, so eliminating the barrier to entry by costs and such. But in the job that I just started at Can Play here, we do a lot of community-based programming. So we're going to the neighborhoods specifically for the kids and offering free programming. So eliminating barriers to transportation, eliminating barriers to cost, even providing equipment for those kids to be able to play. So just really trying to get kids active and healthy and things along those lines.
Okay. Okay. Next. Many times this is the way we have an attitude. We know our clients' problems and we treat them from a safe distance. Medicine, psychiatry, and social work offer us models in which we see in a one-way direction. Someone serves, someone else is being served, and we make sure we don't mix it up. So there's a chance that we could have a professional mindset, right? Which is different what you said, Nissa. Next. What we need to do is we need to have a situation where we are talking to them, but listening to them. The arrow is coming back out. Again, this needs to be redone because the arrow is going in, but the arrow needs to be both ways, in and out, in and out. And then we need to be talking with each other, with the public sector, the private sector. We need to get them talking. So we need to have dialogue where we're understanding each other and talking to each other and having a flow of meaning between each other. Does that make sense? Okay. So how do we put a table that gets all those people sitting together where all are welcome and all are necessary? Preferred seating for the least lost and left out, but additional seating for the others. How do we guarantee that everyone is listening and conversing with everyone? Who is the relational router for the table? Who is going to be the person that does the relational routing of making all this happen? Where is the table located that's going to be for this to happen? And how do we get the right people there? Now, have you ever thought about setting a table where you would pull corporate, education, government, faith-based, and everybody together? Have you ever done that? I'm asking.
I would say less of my own table and more of existing tables, events, networking or otherwise, where I try to figure out who's in the room versus who to get in the room, and who I might be interested in meeting versus, like I said, who I'm bringing in myself. So probably taking more advantage of other people's tables than building my own table.
Okay. Trent?
I think I've tried to do something like this. The struggle for me, and maybe it's just contextual to the city, is one of the seats in particular seems to dominate, which takes away from the headline of all are welcome and all are necessary.
Who is your city, who's a city council member in your ward?
Lisa Goodman.
Do you have Lisa come to things?
Lisa typically doesn't come to things, but she sends her people to come to the things.
Okay, so how are you ever going to meet Lisa?
I know Lisa. I'm
Okay,
just friends with her people.
got it. Okay, that's good. Okay, well, how would you answer that, Darby?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so I have a question. So just last week, I was invited to a group that would be wealthier funders, and the topic would be homelessness. And the people that will be there are people interested in homelessness that could possibly give money to it. And then there are individuals from homeless ministries. But what I noticed was there's no one that's homeless that's going to be in that group. And then I thought, well, I could volunteer to bring Robert. But okay, here's where I stop, because then I have to go and pick up Robert. I have to bring in Robert. I have Robert in my car. I don't know Robert that well. I don't know what part of his story is true, which part of it could be a risk. What would you do?
John, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I have a rule in my life that I don't pick up women and people that I don't know enough about. I don't know their family. I don't know how to get a hold of them, this, that, and the other. And that's through experience, especially women picking up men that they know nothing about. So I would be a little nervous if you did that and stuff. Now, if you wanted homeless people to take to that, I have some guys that, just came out of, that are staying in the shelter, staying in their car, that I know, I've already vetted, and that's with anybody. If they said, you need to pick up, we need a Native American, and you said, oh, I know one, I've seen him on the street, I would say the same thing, African American, whatever, and some women, a lot of women around here. So yeah, it's just something you have to use discernment, because we sometimes want to do good and we put ourselves in crazy situations.
Thank you.
Marquise, what insight do you have for this?
Be more specific.
Oh,
I got you. So being the area I'm in and coming from where I'm coming from, a lot of people used to think that, something's wrong with people that are struggling with mental health, gangs and all things like that. So I try to take the approach of like what happened to them versus what's wrong with them.
Okay. Now, I'd like to look at that last line. How do we get the right people there? There's 4 kinds of people. There's adders, and there's subtractors. There's multipliers, and there's dividers. An adder is somebody who adds to what you're doing. A subtractor is somebody who takes from you. They've got an agenda of, I'm in there to get what I can. Multipliers are people that don't give right away. They wait to see if you're worth giving to. So you have to earn your right with them. Dividers are people who come in and they look like adders. But pretty soon you see that they brought you out here and we're close, but they've divided me from everybody else. Now, do you recognize some people in these categories? Is this a helpful way of looking at things? And when you call people to the table, you want adders and multipliers, not subtractors and dividers. So John said he vetted people. You have vetted some of these guys, right?
Yeah.
So you have made an evaluation of whether they are an adder, multiplier, or a subtractor or divider.
Yeah. But in my occupation, I have to take on all of them. And hopefully change dividers into multipliers and subtractors into adders. That's what shows up at my door every day. But, if you invest time in them and get to know who they are, then you know what you can and some of them I invited to my house, some not. Some of them I've given money to, some not. Some of them I've referred for a job, some not. But I invested my time in them and gave them the benefit of the doubt and stuff. Every once in a while you get burnt, but it's worth it.
How many people have you had to let go?
You mean let go and
Fire.
fire? Probably about 25, 30.
So you really do have to come to a point where they can't sit at the table anymore.
Oh yeah, it's just not a right situation for them. Things of that nature. I've had a couple of sexual predators that were preying on vulnerable women. I had to let go. Things of that nature. It just, every job ain't right for everybody. Every situation is not right. You don't have an alcoholic tending bar. It's just that simple.
Okay.
That's a good way to say it.
What's that?
That's a good way to say it. That's a great analogy, having an alcoholic tending a bar.
Yep. Okay. Good.
Sorry, I dropped off there. I'm not sure what happened. Our signal just dropped, but I think this is a helpful illustration. I'd be curious if anyone had any thoughts around the retention of multipliers. I think sometimes we get people that we think are great, or maybe they are great and they want to be multipliers, and maintaining high capacity, talented people in a public service workforce isn't always easy because they can make more money somewhere else.
Yes. And not only are these employees, but sometimes they're board members and people that come around you to help you. And they don't always join the board, but it's important to have some of them on your board, isn't it?
Right.
But,
or in your network, even if, they don't have to necessarily be on the board. I mean, there's talented people that can do the work of a board member without being on the board.
Yep. So we're talking about how do we work with government, corporate, faith-based education, community, and we're just looking at how do I pull people from these different areas that are multipliers and adders to come around and help us set a table for transformational change. Okay. And how do I build a team? Okay. And I want to make sure that I have the right people. I have goers and winners. Okay, next. So at Urban Ventures, we spent a lot of time here, 30 years, and some of the corporate that we worked with, you see up on the left, Best Buy, General Mills, Target. I mean, there's stories in all of these where we built relationships and they helped us. You see, ATK sent 10 kids twice down to Florida to NASA Space Center, and they watched the launching up of the satellites, and it was just an amazing thing for neighborhood kids to go down to see that twice, because we got to know the board chair. So all these different stories up there. Then you see on the left, we've got senior pastors of churches and big churches out in the suburbs and all around that we worked with. And then we had education. We've been in the schools, the colleges, the universities. We've worked with them, taught courses there, had them come down and do studies in the neighborhood. And look at the government people. We've had to work with all kinds of government folk, the city council, the mayors. We've worked with the governors. Al Quie was the Republican governor who, when he retired, came on our board, and then different governors, and then we worked with the neighborhood, all the neighborhood groups. I ran CNIA, Central Neighborhood Improvement Association, for 11 years as part of what I did in the neighborhood. So we have relationships like that. So does that make sense, that if you're going to have a table that you're going to set for transformation for your city, that you bring these people in to work? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Art, it makes a lot of sense. And the biggest groups that practice division are Democrats and Republicans. They fight each other all the time. You know, I've seen some of these ads about a Republican make some nasty ads about a Democrat, and you have to choose sides. You can't be in the middle. Then they call you something else. You're like a stepchild, a moderate, or whatever they call you and stuff. But that's what's wrong with our country today, is dividers and stuff. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican. If you have a good idea, it should be passed through. But we don't do that because we vote along party lines. That's a catchphrase for we are better than you. So we have to get better than we are, or our nation will suffer tremendously.
Okay, I'm going to make a statement here, because I think what's important is that if you're going to set a table where you're going to have people coming around and talking, some of those government people aren't necessarily government leaders today in office, because they come with agendas. I mean, serious agendas, and other people are, it turns them off. You need somebody who is out of office, but has credibility and authenticity. That's why Al Quie was good for us. Does that make sense? So you have people that aren't in office, but have been out of office and have credibility. They have trust. Okay? I'd like to go back to that last one. When you look at this, I want you to ask questions, because this is a very important sheet right here. How do you get in touch with people like this? How do you make contact with people like this? I'd like to know how you would ask these questions. Okay? How do you set a table like this?
I actually ran across this issue just yesterday, more from a single philanthropist side of things versus some of the individuals on here. I think that there's a lot of information out there for, government officials and their emails and, addresses, things that you could look up online. But there was a specific funder donor that I was looking into that was supporting a university, the University of Dubuque, and their football players had reached out about potentially hosting a clinic. But I couldn't find anything because he's retired. So I don't have a way to grab his email address or something like that. So I'm trying to get creative. One thing I saw was there was a magazine or a newspaper article about him. So was considering reaching out to the person that published that article and seeing if they had contact information for them. But I think LinkedIn's a powerful tool. I use LinkedIn quite often to see who knows who and what universities they may have attended, what jobs they've held, previously, and so on, to see what kind of warm introductions might be out there, or what kind of connections are out there, versus me sending a cold email asking for someone's time that may not have a lot of time.
Okay. Anyone else? How do you get in touch with these people? How do you make contact with them? As a relational router, how do I build relationships with the corporate, the faith-based, the education, the government, and the community?
Art, if I could jump in one more time, I think it's about going out to events and stuff that they may be hosting in those communities. I know I've met a lot of really great people just, watching their social media, seeing when they're hosting an event. Give an example, in my neighborhood, they do a lot of like back to school, events and stuff like that. And neighborhood or night out, or national night out is one that the neighborhood association, brings together a lot of these different partners already. So just being present at those events and having a presence there.
Right. Okay. So all the businesses got burned out on Lake Street for 4 miles. US Bank lost their bank, burned out. They rebuilt it. And when they did the opening, the grand opening for the new bank, the CEO of US Bank was there, Andrew Serrod. And I was there at that grand opening and met him, got his card, talked to him, and we've been in touch since then. So you have to go some places where things are happening and people show up and go over and talk with them. Does that make sense? This is the kind of connection that you want to do, right? And you build a relationship. So one of the questions I would have of him is there anybody from US Bank that he would consider being on our board of directors, for instance? And then I would get a possible person from US Bank that would be in touch with him, that would be involved with us. That's a possibility. Okay. Okay, next question. Next sheet. How can you assure preferred seating for the vulnerable in light of this? How can we occupy our seat at the table to honor the vulnerable as well as our own vulnerability? And how can we ensure everyone is listening and conversing with each other? Aren't those good questions? If I'm going to gather people to the table, go ahead. Lisa?
Oh, no, I was saying yes, those are good questions.
Good questions, okay. How could you bring people to the table? How could you create a table that would bring these people together? Now, I'm just gonna stop and think for a minute. I'm gonna go to Darby. Darby, what big companies are in Richfield?
Best Buy, Weiss Construction, and a few major home and mortgage loan originators.
Okay. Anyone else?
Isn't Target corporate out there, or is that a different?
Target's downtown.
Oh, it's
Which is-
downtown?
Yeah, which is changing.
Oh,
No,
wow.
they got that big Target out there on Richfield right there.
What about,
Right.
I'm sorry, what about Best Buy? That's what I'm talking about. Best Buy corporate.
Best Buy, yeah.
Yep.
They have
There we
their
go.
corporate headquarters there. Yeah.
Yes, really nice.
Where's Target corporate headquarters going?
394.
Well, are they gonna go to 394? Okay. So they're moving out of downtown, but that's a whole different, what's happening is downtown is 40% occupied. And we have a lot of problems because of what's happened down there.
Right.
But when I'm just trying to take a city, now let's take center, let's take Brooklyn Center. Listen, what do you have out there corporately?
Honestly, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, now I'm asking that question because that's an important question for you all.
Yeah.
Because there are corporates out there, okay,
Hmm.
that are part of this, but they're not part of it right now. So how do we help? So you'd go to Tent City and put a tent in, but how would you reach out, zoom out to the corporate and reach some of them to bring them in? Because aren't they important to making this city a transformational city for everyone?
Medtronic.
Good.
Medtronic's in Brooklyn Park.
Medtronic is in Brooklyn Park. Okay. Now let's talk to Travis. What about Des Moines? What do you have in Des Moines?
Financial industry, insurance industry, and then a lot of technology companies are starting to move data centers in here, Facebook's, Amazon's, those sort of things. I think because of the affordability of the land and building and such.
Okay. Now, do you know that on the board of Pillars of Promise, which is your leadership foundation there, you've got the former plant manager of John Deere,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got the senior vice president of Principal, which is a huge financial company.
Yep.
So you've already got some people around that know other people.
Yep.
That you could call a meeting and they get people there.
Yep. There's also some convenience stores. Casey's Come and Goes are large presence here as well. Underneath of larger organizations, Kraus Group would own the Come and Goes. So.
Yeah. And the former CEO of Wells Fargo is in your town too. So you've got some amazing opportunities there of connecting with the financial people.
Yep.
That don't know anything about what you're doing.
It's true.
Need to, and vice versa. Connecting here to here and here to here. Making sense?
Yep.
Marquise, what's in your city? What's in our community?
A lot of rebuilding. We got like
what corporate?
I would say U.S. Bank.
U.S. Bank.
I believe Target.
Okay.
I would say that. I don't know about would the Midtown Exchange Building be considered that?
Well, you got a lot there, don't you?
Yeah.
Who owns it?
Polad family.
Nope. Now this is important because, if you wanted to get in touch with them, the Ryan companies, Ryan Construction built it.
Okay.
Then there's another guy called George Sherman who has 300 apartments there. I'm just saying, these are the people in the neighborhood. Now, have you ever gone over to the Wells Fargo campus?
I have not.
Okay, I'm just saying, these are corporate entities in our neighborhood.
Honeywell.
They moved. They moved out to New Jersey, and then Wells Fargo took over. So these are important stories in the neighborhood of the resources, the people who have the resources, that if they knew what your needs were or what your vision or plan was, might be able to connect with you if you could set a table to bring them in. Making sense?
Yes, but how will we get to that table?
Ah, now that's a question. That's why we're talking. That's what this is all about. Because you have the corner, you have the most important corner in the country, in the world at one time, 38th and Chicago. And by the way, the courts are still, they're still processing and prosecuting, aren't they? The 5 officers that were on trial.
4 officers. Yes, one of them just got sentenced yesterday to 3 years, I believe.
Right, right. And I have a picture on a taxi cab in Nairobi, Kenya, of Chauvin on the top of George Floyd on the taxi cab in a picture. So it's gone around the world, you see. So you have a corner that, and some unbelievable things that could go on there to bring people in, okay, and have a story about what needs to be done here. Okay. Travis, you could put on a basketball thing and pull people in.
Yeah, we invited a few different organizations, just organizations that I thought could benefit from meeting each other, even though they weren't necessarily involved with the actual clinic itself. So I thought that was good, but definitely could have done a better job getting more people in the room.
And all we're doing is talking about the intentionality of doing that.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? And then having somebody like Rob Best, who recommended you for this program, to invite those people.
Yep. Come out and see the program and the impact that they're making.
Isn't that crazy? And then for Michael Hurst to come around and be your spokesperson, you know.
Sure.
And then you have, by the way, you have a new guy up there who ran the Drake relays.
Yeah.
Ryan Brown.
Yep.
And he ran the relays for 11 years. Wow. Wow. Okay. And so I'm just saying that's an interesting set of circumstances. Okay. Now, Darby, you with us?
Yep.
Friday, what's happening Friday at 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock in Richfield?
Homecoming football game.
But BJ Skoog has
the Mixto mural. Yeah.
Say it again.
The Mixto mural.
There's a huge mural that they've been working on for a couple of years. And they're featuring that at a program Friday night, tomorrow night. Are you going to be there?
Yes.
Who else is going to be there?
That's a really good question. Hopefully community leaders, hope the former mayor, a bunch of former colleagues of mine, and I got people with like-minded interests definitely wanting to invest in the community.
And it's important for you to be there.
Right.
You should, and meet all these people, right?
Right.
So that's an event that's a really good event. That's setting the table for meeting all these people. Collecting cards, giving your card out and collecting cards.
Across the room.
Yeah, across the room. And booking a lunch out at Best Buy with the CEO or whatever, you know, I'm just saying. Taking opportunities to zoom out and zoom in, cards, meetings, bringing people together. Okay. You also have a big event for Young Life coming up when?
November 3rd.
November 3rd. Where's it going to be?
Pinstripes in the ballrooms upstairs.
Okay. And you're going to see some people tomorrow night that maybe you could invite to that thing. You see where I'm going?
Oh, yeah.
This is relational routing. Okay. and we're getting people to come together. Yes, what? Okay. Okay. Next. We're talking about transformational leaders, not incremental leaders, not just going to work, doing a job. And we're looking at transforming a community. And we're going to change geography into community, and it takes somebody to do that. By the way, the government doesn't do that. The corporate does not do that. They build stores. They don't change communities. I'll give you a story. Target store down on Lake Street was ransacked. They were burned, but the fires weren't successful because they had 18 sprinkler systems that worked, and they saved the building. But before they rebuilt, the first store to rebuild, before they opened up, they did a survey in the neighborhood, and they found out that people said, we use Target, but we don't know anybody there. We don't know any management. We don't know the managers. We don't know the leaders. We just use your store. We buy, come on, your machinery for us. So Target had a soft opening, and they invited all of their managers in, and they invited the neighborhood in, and for 4 hours, they had food and a grand opening and met everybody so that everybody was meeting each other. Isn't that a great concept? How do you change geography into community? So who will cast the vision? Call the meetings, coordinate the efforts, and produce the outcomes. Who will call the CEOs, the business owners, the governor, the mayor, the council leaders, the lay people, the nonprofit leaders to work together around a transformational vision and plan? Are you one of those people? Isn't that a good question? Isn't that a good framework? To be a transformation leader, you're going to be the person that does that. Next sheet. Now remember from last week, do not plan events, build a fellowship. There's enough egos and enough agendas on the way to the event to blow it up. But if you build a fellowship, and the fellowship does that, that's why I said, Travis, when you have John Deere and you have Principal and you have the others, Chris Canary over at Hope, and you got Drake Relays, you got Brian, and you got all these people, Michael. When that team puts something on, it's gonna work. Does that make sense? And that's what you do. And that's why it would be important out there in Brooklyn Center, how to get all these people together to put something on that's featuring Brooklyn Center and what we're going to do in transforming Brooklyn Center into a geography, into community. Okay. Now, next one. Does this describe you? Are you a broken-hearted leader for your peanut? Your peanut. Are you a trust builder? You're building trust. Are you a transformational thinker? Are you a catalyst for change? Are you long haul committed? It takes a long time. It takes a long time. It's a life job. Are you a relational router? Does this describe you? Next. If it is, this is your assignment. This is your assignment right here. And what's your plan? How do you get everybody talking? not just for the vulnerable, but get them talking with you. And how do you get everybody talking together? And how do you set the table? And what's your plan? Now, I want to say this, that when you came here the first day, we handed out a spreadsheet that we called the final exam. And it has the name of your organization, the vision, the mission, the goals, and it's got everything on it. This is what we are working on as we go on here, okay? So go to the next one. Remember the picture? Because you want to see your peanut. And this is our peanut. And John, how many years have you been in this?
26,
Working on it, but how long were you before?
since I was 14 years old, I'm 68. I don't know the math.
But there's 50 years working in this peanut. I've been working in it 50 years. Jess, how long have you been working in it?
Almost 50.
Okay. Jill, how long have you been working?
Oh, I guess it's going on probably about 7 now.
Okay. So it takes time with a fellowship of people that are going to do it. So where's your map? Where's your peanut? Next page. And then what are the next steps? We do our weekly call, and we're going to be asking this: what's your peanut? And where's your table? And who's at your table? These are the things we'll be talking about on our calls. And then we'll be preparing for future sessions. We want you to read Bloodline, which you got, and if you didn't get it, we'll get it to you. But you should have picked that up here, the first Thursday. And then I'm going to send something out about how to see your city, which is going to be some small sections of how to look at it and how to work at it and how to do it. So I'll send that out as a link next. Does that make sense?
Tell them what next week will be.
Next week, we're going to have, do we have that on? We don't, okay. We're going to have mental health next week. Mental health is Melinda Cathy, who's a mental health expert. By the way, she spent 20 years in Russia. So she's got big scope, and she's going to bring in mental health because we've got to help people with mental health issues. John, you're going to be on that.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about what are the issues in the neighborhood for the vulnerable and for the people that we're working with, and how do we do that? Does that make sense? So that will be Thursday at 11 o'clock to 1 next week.
And tell them to put the 13th on their calendar. Prepare breakfast.
2 weeks from today. Is it 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks from today.
It's a different time.
13th of October, we're going to be here for the Minnesota Prayer Breakfast, which will be at the state, but we're going to have it here live with us in person. We're going to be here at 6:30 for breakfast, 7 o'clock for the meeting. That'll be Zoomed, and we're going to report in from here to that around the state of Minnesota. So that's going to be the 13th of October, and you'll get a special invite to that. And by the way, like Trent, you could bring somebody, and Marquise, you could bring somebody. Now you won't be coming up, Travis, but you'll be on the Zoom.
I'm going to try. I'm going to try to make it up.
Are you really?
I'm going to try. Yeah.
Okay. And Darby and Kenneth is on. Good to have you, Kenneth. And Nissa. So we'll be talking more about that. Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. Now, if we want to talk some more, we can. Otherwise, we're done here for today and what we're presenting. Do you have anything that you'd like to add or talk about? And John, is there anything you would like to share in terms of what we would add here?
No, I'm good. We covered a lot.
Okay. Any questions and any thoughts?
I don't have any, but I just want to say thank you.
Okay, are we tracking with good thinking? Are we talking about the right kinds of things? Okay. We're trying to put words to it, and we've been doing it, so we have background and experience, and we'll keep working on this, okay? Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Peace.
See ya. Bye bye.
Yep.